to Crystal Clear Moments, where we explore the beauty and the depth of crystal clear moments in your life, right? We're going to talk about your life and your crystal clear moments. I'm the host, Crystal Blackwell, and I'd like to invite you to join me on the journey of reflection and discovery. Today, I have with me my friend, Joan, but we call her Joni, so I'm going to say Joni, which I think really fits you. You're more of a Joni, I think, than a Joan.
Feel like a Joni.
Yeah, I like that. Hibdon. So I'm giving you her bio because I want you to know about Joni's, who she is. And I think when you hear her bio, if you know me, you're going to go, yeah, I can see how these ladies are very similar. We have a lot in common. So she's passionate and dynamic speaker and known for her ability to inspire and empower audiences with a global and diverse industry background. Joni brings a unique perspective to the stage, captivating listeners and with her engaging storytelling and insightful wisdom. After spending 30 years in HR, doing coaching and professional development, Joni channeled her passion for cultivating cultures with people and helped them thrive by establishing her organization, her business, JDH Insights. JDH Insights engages with organizations in various capacities, such as one-on-one executive coaching, leadership, performance coaching, development, team building. I bet you if they come to you with a roadblock or pain point, you figure out how to get to it, right? Because that's what we do, right? We try to solve problems for organizations. So even though I listed all these things, I think she does more. There's definitely more to that when you support organizations. She gains a reputation as a trusted coach, advisor, valuable business partner. I do know that trust is a value, and being a partner in relationships matters. That's part of your core, who you are, and sort of your core of your business values as well. And
absolutely.
And when we're dealing with people and leaders, that's like key stuff. We got to be able to demonstrate that and want that and look for that too with partners that we connect with. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
That and the energy and the ability there's a give and take, connection for sure.
Yeah, it's not when you're looking at organizations for partnerships. I know I look at it like I'm dating. And I'm sizing them up. And I'm hoping they're sizing me up too. Because 100%. When we sign the dotted line, I want a relationship. I feel like I'm part of their team. I feel like, we're a couple.
Yep. I step into it the same way. How are we going to work together in our communication skills and alignment? And have we set the right stage? And have we purposefully created the relationship that we want between the two of us as opposed to accidenting into a relationship?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And, I'm glad I went this direction on purpose because I want our podcast listeners and the Crystal Clear Moments podcast audience to know how we met. And we just talked about it. And I talked about my son today when he was asking me, like, Mom, where are you going? I'm going to do my podcast. And he asked me about who you were. So we met right before, and you helped me, you actually brought this to my memory, right before COVID. Mm-hmm. Like, we're talking, I think COVID kicked off, March?
Early March, mid-March, yeah.
I think we met February.
We did. We met right. The third week of February.
Yes. So 2 maybe weeks shy of the big shutdown, right? The shutdown of the world. And we were at, you remember, a board member of an organization.
The Arizona HR Executive Forum.
Right. And I'd heard about them, and I was my first time actually being introduced to this organization by way of supporting. I did like a roundtable discussion.
It was a roundtable discussion. We had a handful of SMEs, subject matter experts, to come in and talk about things that they were passionate about and that could make a difference in the workplace. Yeah.
And I think I was at the table with the different generations, and you guys know I'm always talking about the different generations. Now we have the Gen Alphas, to Z Alphas. So, we have all our different generations out there. So we were at the panel, did the breakouts, and we met and we connected, and instantly, we liked each other. You know how you meet people and you just connect, and you have a beautiful smile. You're very approachable. You always, you look like a person that someone will want to meet. So I felt that. instantly,
As did I with you.
Instantly, I felt that.
Yep. I felt the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't wait to get to know more of you and to hear your story and to figure out what it is that you do. And so we kind of did that.
Yeah, we did. So then we Zoomed friendship for the entire time. And I think we cheated once, right when they said we can go out a little bit. Right when, Arizona went a little rogue. Right when they said we can go out, I think the whole world did it, except us in Florida. We went out to lunch. It was outside. It was as safe as you could be, right? But we had to get out. Good thing we did, because we got an opportunity to spend some time together, and we set up time, Zoom conversations. And then I joined the organization, which, let me tell you, just good people, smart, great backgrounds. We're talking, Fortune 50 executives are part of this team, and they're bringing their A game. So I felt like, I was with just the elite in the state, and sharing resources. You guys were so open, brought me in, and, I just really, love being part of that organization. So give you guys a little bit of background on us. So what I want to do now was kind of shift a little bit and ask you, just tell me, in this moment where you're at, Joni, what's a recent crystal clear moment for you?
Oh my. It's a recent crystal clear moment.
Yeah.
A recent crystal clear moment is that life is shifting and new chapters are being opened up. And I'm going to say, kind of in my business as well as in my life, my husband is talking about next chapters in our lives and what that's going to look like. And a crystal clear moment for me recently is I need to really think about this.
Yeah.
I've been going down my path. I love what I do. I love my clients. I love everything around who I serve, and I love human beings, as you know. But also this whole notion there's something else. There's something else to be considered.
Isn't it crazy how, I think my husband and I were in the same space. We're talking about that next space, and we used to talk about it years ago differently, but now it's really the next door we're going to open up. It's right there. And that crystal clear moment is that it is there. You can't get away from it. And you have to lean into it, right? And it's a little scary a little bit, but fun and anxious and adventurous and all of that, in one.
It is.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, so that is a moment. And I feel like it's an ongoing moment, because sometimes crystal clear moments are like a snap, it happens and you get it. And we'll talk about some maybe that you've had that just you knew right away was a moment. But I feel like this one, Joni, is lingering.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right there. And there's a lot of choices and options, a lot of doors to choose in some respects. And none of it has to be perfect.
Right.
I think what's crystal clear for me is that there is the next chapter, and it's ours to design and ours to define. And we're talking about that. What does that really mean?
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Good. And your face lit up as you're saying it. You're lighting up, you're excited about it. These are good conversations you're having with your spouse.
Excited and frightened.
Yeah,
it's a both and.
So you got a good poker face, girl, because you said, it is kind of frightening.
It's the unknown, for sure.
Definitely it is. So we're going to go backwards a little bit to some early years, some of your early years where, what was we talked about the most recent. Let's talk about a crystal clear moment that you can remember early, and you define it. It could be childhood, it could be college, it could be young adult, whatever. That really pivot. You had a pivot on that moment.
I have such a clear moment, in mind. When I was 10 years old, I remember I was walking across the street from a neighbor's house where I had just been babysitting their two young children. And as I'm walking across the street after leaving this home, which to me, they had the perfect family, the perfect everything set up. 10 years old, I'm walking back home, and I decide in a instant, I am not going to have the life that my mom had. And it wasn't that she had a bad life. She was a single mother of 5. She was working 3 jobs, barely getting by, having a lot of challenges. And I decided in a moment that I didn't want that life. I wanted the life that I just left, the house that I just left. I wanted that life. So it was really clear to me that I wanted something very different, more professional looking, for sure, at 10 years old. And who knows those things at 10?
Yeah. I don't know, Joni. That's, I don't think we've talked about this. I remember you telling me a little bit about that, but I had my first crystal clear moment at 10 as well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. Mine was very, very clear, that moment. And it became a value. Similar to what you're saying, like it was a shift, and it wasn't a judging. It wasn't, it was just that's when the pivot happened for you when you were 10.
I wanted something different.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So what's kind of funny, and I have to say this because I know some people out there who think like me. See, you don't do this nowadays in this generation, you guys, but back then, 10-year-olds babysat. Right?
Thanks for reminding all of us of that.
You know what I mean? We babysat. I mean,
we went to work at 12 and 13.
Yes, we did. We did stuff, right?
We
so
did.
I remember, I was like the babysitter. That was like my gig. I was good at it. So I don't think I even know anyone who babysits anymore. I mean,
and it's a different gig. I mean, if you're babysitting and you're in your, mid to late teens, you're not making 50 cents an hour like you used to make.
Right. I was happy when they would buy me snacks.
Right.
Like, they would buy cookies or whatever. But I had to say that because I know if, especially
10 years old,
some people, my employees who work for me, I'm thinking of one, she would probably go, what, 10? But that's what happened.
Back then, that's how it worked. And
that's how we had money, extra money in our pockets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially, with my mom working 3 jobs, 5 kids, extra money in my pocket was important. I wanted to buy something. I wanted to buy a girl's shirt, not wear a brother's hand-me-downs.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Yes. So what do you think, and being that being part of your DNA, what crystal clear moment, or maybe it's a series that, how did you start to walk that 10-year-old vision out? Like how did you begin to pivot? What were some of the things that you did?
I think the things that I did is I started to pay attention to some of my friends, my friends' families. Some of my friends' families, the father was a pilot. My uncle was a school teacher. A friend's father was an attorney. Where there were 2 parents perhaps working in the house, but I was paying attention to the family structure and how that was all set up. And there was a certain level of professionalism that I was drawn to. And also I would say some of the elements of the core values of the family that I was drawn to. And again, my mom did an amazing job with what she had and her core values and work ethic. I think my work ethic has certainly come from her and my heart and everything. But I was paying attention to other things to see what things I could glean from their family lives and that might look a little bit different than mine because I didn't have a father living in our household.
Right.
And so just kind of those types of things that started to lock in, and the recognition that in order for me to have the things that I wanted or something to be different, I had to work hard in school, pay attention to my grades, be responsible. I found a certain level of independence. I was probably always pretty independent, but there were just some things that I knew that I needed to be and how I needed to show up in order for all of the things to come into play that I wanted.
That's pretty brilliant to know that as a young person.
And I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know that I knew it, but as I've had a chance to reflect, I don't think it's an accident that I had the friends that I had and the family structures around me and the choices that I made. I don't think that's an accident, but I think it was locked somewhere into my subconscious.
Yeah, no, I don't think anything really is an accident. I love how you mentioned, your friends, families, and your uncle. Another word, that I like to use, like you had a tribe that was existing the way you wanted to exist. So you had, you saw it, and it was real. So you were able to glean and look at that. And I think it's so important that, especially for young people, and this can even go into like a corporate environment, we model it. They see what it is that you want them to get.
Yep.
Something about having that example, reading it, that can help. Someone telling you, but to actually sit back and watch it, it's different. I mean, that's a different, that really helps you take that in, and begin to model some of those different traits, as you said, and like you said, something about professionalism. You were drawn to that. A pilot is professional, a school teacher is professional, those types of things. So, I always like to remind, the wiser ones that we still have, to model a lot of these behaviors for our younger professionals or our young people, because just like you were watching, they're watching.
Yeah, they are.
They're watching us. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
That's pretty powerful. So now you're working in corporate, and you're in HR. I've always admired HR people because you guys, let me tell you, you guys hear some stuff. So, okay, let's get fun here. What's like the craziest HR story that to this day you remember? Like craziness, Joni. Like you're like, I can't believe this is happening.
Boy, I'll tell you, and it's going to walk down the path of, call it, sexual harassment in the workplace, right? All of those. There are so many that that can show up in my brain all at once. I would say the craziest one was completely inappropriate, but where after a night of, a full day of meetings at a trade show and everything, a bunch of sales guys go out.
Yes.
And they go out and they have a couple of drinks, and then they decide that it seems to be a good idea to go to a strip club.
Yeah.
And one of the guys says, I'm not going to go to a strip club. I'm not going with you. I'm going to go home, go back to the hotel. I'm going to call my wife. I'm going to call it a night. And the guys that he happens to be with, they're calling him really bad names, very inappropriate names.
Right.
And as a result of that, and then those guys go off to the strip club, do their thing. But as a result of how they treated their male coworker, he ended up coming to HR and saying, I was harassed by these guys. Yes, we've been drinking all the things. And that whole group of guys got fired for being inappropriate to one of their other salesperson. It's the behavior after hours sometimes with alcohol, being the thing,
Something about, about what you mentioned, alcohol, after hours, traveling, hotel, away from home, always just cause so much drama for the workplace, and it always ends up on HR's lap.
It does, and you look at it and you think, what were you thinking?
Yeah. There's no thinking involved.
No, and lives changed in an instant.
Oh, yeah.
Friendships broken and deteriorated.
Yeah, people losing jobs.
Right.
And what's interesting is that happened then. That still happens today. And it's like, when do we get that? Because I've heard that type of story so many times, but on the other side where, I'm the manager they're coming to me first, and I'm going to HR saying, okay, how do we handle this? I have this person and this is what happened, and I may not have been there, should never be, So yeah, I always think that anyone who's in HR some babysitting going on, some coaching, some development. It's like you check every box that the parent checks, but you are in a professional environment.
Right.
And then you have to treat people with respect and be professional. But inside you, it's like you act like you're acting like a child.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why I was drawn to HR, and that was a crystal clear moment too, but I love human beings. I love the complexity. I love the messiness. I love the gifts that everybody has. There isn't one single human being on this planet like the other.
Yeah, true.
Not
Very
one.
True, yeah.
And so for me, and we talked earlier about like the challenges that we're faced with, I love trying to solve challenges. I love trying to get people and understand what's going on for them. And I think the hardest thing for me being in HR is seeing that those types of behaviors that I just described do have such a tremendous impact on lives. And that sometimes when we check out, we're not being conscious of our behavior and who we're being.
Yeah.
How it impacts so many things.
Yeah. Excuse me. So tell me so you spent 30 years in that capacity, that's quite a bit of years in HR. That's a lot. Because most people, after a while, just the job itself, unless you do different things.
I did a lot of different things.
Because it's a big umbrella. I don't think people realize it's a lot to that. But it is people.
Yep.
It's all about the people, all about people. So when did you say, okay, I'm ready to launch? When was your crystal clear moment of, I'm ready to launch my business. I'm ready to step into my next chapter, my calling, my passion. Like, what did you call that?
I would say I'd been with an organization for a while, and I'd been thinking about, like, what is my next thing? I was introduced to this concept of transformational coaching and leadership in 2010. And the woman who brought it to the organization I was working for at the time, she was so, we use the words radical, provocative in terms of how she viewed the world and how she viewed leadership development. And I was in awe of how she could help people transform. Part of it, people needed to want. They should want to transform, right? So she couldn't make them do anything, but she had such a gift for it. When that happened, and then the organization started going through some shifts and things like that, I started to notice that there was a possibility to start my own thing. Started talking with people, meeting people, met a couple of authors. Again, watching and how they modeled and the things that I was drawn to. And then I had the opportunity a couple of times. The organization I worked with went through 2 different acquisitions. The first time it was going through an acquisition was when my husband and I were moving from Colorado to Arizona. And I had declared, when this acquisition goes through, I want out. I'm moving to Arizona. I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to start my own business. Fortunately for me, thank you God, I didn't leave that organization when it was acquired. I ended up getting pulled into the next organization, which I'm really grateful for, and was part of a really phenomenal talent management organization where I was one of many people who helped to support the global leadership development and talent management. Wow. I did that for 3 years, and then the company was acquired yet again. And when it was acquired the second time, I said I want out. And at that time, I was given the opportunity to do so. It was an interesting thing. I wasn't sure what the net was going to look like, but I had structurally designed in my head that I was going to spend time outside of corporate, working with executives, doing leadership and executive coaching, leadership development, team effectiveness, all the things I do today, and have had a ball. It's been so much fun. Yeah. I love what I do.
Yeah, I love it. I that we share. I love something about you live in your passion, your purpose. It's not work. No. You wake up every day excited. I so get that. And I always say, I know it sounds corny, but it's for real. I mean, it is. When you love what you do, it's part of you every day. You carry it. It's such a blessing to be in that space. So it sounds like when I hear your journey, the last, I'm going to say quarter, and when you were working with those organizations and they were acquiring, and you were like, to me, I'm hearing, and you let me know that you were actually putting tools in your tool belt and you were learning. So I find it fascinating when I look back at, I would say, my last quarter in corporate before I launched my business. I was actually, in school learning techniques, and I kind of knew it, but I didn't. Yeah. It was one of those, I kind of knew I was, but I didn't. And I feel like that, like you said, you were learning some transformational coaching and leadership. And, so I feel like when you're in line with your purpose, a part of before you get there, there's a season of learning if you're open to it. And it's can be a little sticky, and you could, like, you went through a couple different organizations, but if you have that vision that you know, this is what I think I want to be, you can make that time learning.
Yes. There is a lot of learning, a lot of reflection, certainly a lot of discussion with my husband and my family about doing this. And our financial advisory said, wait 10 years, just hold on, don't do it yet. But the opportunity presented itself. And at that time, to your point, I was learning. I was going to school. I was thinking about, for me, what coaching certification I wanted to get. And I was talking with different coaches to learn more, and, watching people who I considered peers, attain certain things. And it just, my appetite, once it was whetted, and my purpose, I knew that I couldn't turn back, that it was the right thing for me to do.
Good for you.
So,
good for you.
Fun.
It's always, I love hearing people's story, because I like hearing right before you launch. Because I know when you launch, it's scary, but right before is such a delicate space. And I think you're more afraid before than when you actually do it.
I think so.
But yeah, and then talk about, I always say that's the walk on water moment, that you really make your faith walk. When you say, okay, I'm going to do this, and I see all the gaps. I see everything. I've been told, wait 10 years. I'm going to do it now. Yeah. And then it happens.
And one of the wonderful things, and it happens, so there's, talking with family spouses, but I do remember, as I was talking with really good friends of mine who maybe had already taken the lead, one of them, the woman who designed my logo and helped me kind of figure that out, when I called her and I said, I think I'm ready to start my own business, she said, I've been waiting for this call.
Yes, I remember hearing that.
For me was like, the fork was tuned, the tuning fork is like bing. And then other people, sitting across and having breakfast with a dear friend of mine in Denver and saying, I think I'm going to do this. And he's like, and you're ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So having some of that affirmation and knowing that there were already people before me who've done it, and that and they've experienced, and they see something in me that says, you're ready. Let's do it.
Yeah. What did you learn about yourself in that space?
I learned for myself that I have a lot more tools in my tool belt than I thought I did. As you're gathering them over the years, you sometimes forget because you're not using them all of the time. But when you finally, make that step, what I learned was that I had everything I needed. And you mentioned something too about faith. I also had that as well. It was the path that I was meant to walk down, and I've never wavered from thinking that I'm on the right path.
I think, thank you for sharing that, because it's so, for me, as you're talking, I'm reflecting on very similar journeys. And I think that's why when we first met, we connected, because we have so much in common. Just our paths, in life and how we approached it is so similar, especially, our professional space. But when you mentioned, you've had all these tools, all this experience already, and then you learned about yourself is that you were more prepared, that you had everything you needed. Isn't it amazing? I know you've experienced this when you're working with a client or you're creating something, and we're going to talk about your latest creative, then you can tap into your own personal resource and create whatever that's needed. You have everything you need to succeed. And that's when I realized that, Joni, and I don't know if you had this feeling or, crystal clear moment. When I realized I had all the tools I needed, I knew I was in my purpose. And I'm not saying I didn't have certain little things. When I realized I was IT, remember you realize that you can't call. That was my huge crystal clear moment when I launched. My first one was when I realized that I was the IT department. I couldn't call up. We had a guy named Jimmy, and I had him on speed dial, my last job, and I didn't have Jimmy. I was Jimmy. So now I'm pretty good at IT stuff, because of YouTube University and Google, and young people in our lives that we can call up and say, show me how to do this. But that to me was such a crystal clear moment. Girl, you are out there. You are IT. You can't call anyone.
And marketing and accounting. And,
yes.
Where am I getting paid?
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about, right, I'm kind of still that. I'm still that person. I think now I have more confidence in that space, but when you realize it, so that was, I know, definitely and I tell young professionals who want to go, or anyone who wants to go into entrepreneurship, I'm like, you realize you're IT, you're marketing, you're your CFO, you're all these things. And I don't know how I missed that, but, it kind of snuck up on me.
And you create the organization chart and you're at the top, and then you start to create the boxes and you realize you're in all those boxes too.
Yes, I think I should make one of those as a joke and post it like, this is what my org chart looks like for real. But yeah, you're right, definitely. So your latest creative I want you to share. Let's see here. I'm so excited for you because I remember when you were talking about this. Is this the Leader's Guide to Mastering Feedback, Transform Relationship and Results, which I love that word, of course, one conversation at a time. And look at this. I love the cover. It's really nice. It's colorful. You got a kind of nice book here, girl. Look at you.
Yeah, surprise.
This is serious. This isn't one of those, like mine would probably look like, 120 pages and font 15. I mean, you've got a serious book here. So talk to us about mastering feedback. Like, why is that so important to you?
Well, this is a crystal clear moment. When I received feedback that changed my life, that was like huge for me, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But the reason why this topic was so important to me, and I can actually geek out on feedback, is that a number of my clients will come and say, I don't know how to say the thing to the person, and like, well, just say that thing. Like, I can't say that. Well, why can't you say that? Well, they might get mad. They might not. Well, they might cry. Well, what if they don't? So I found that I was coaching so many people on how to give feedback. And given my own experience in receiving feedback, it just felt like something natural to do from a lens that I have, which is around stories that I've experienced and things that I can share. And then also, because I am a coach, I spent a lot of time in this book asking people to utilize the practices and reflections. So things like when you think about needing to give feedback, who's the person you need to give feedback to? What do you know about them? Why is the feedback important and why now? And, how do you want what outcome do you want when the feedback is given? So getting people really to think about what this is and is your the purpose of the feedback, is that greater or is the fear in giving feedback greater? So oftentimes people put fear before purpose. And so in my book, what I try to do is help guide people into thinking about feedback in a very different way.
So you mentioned that you was given feedback. Do you mind sharing?
I would love to.
What that was? Because that's a huge crystal clear moment for you.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing that?
I mind a bit. Yeah. I've been working with this organization, and in this particular organization, I was overseeing all of the learning and development for the organization, things, sales, operations, process, all the things. So the team that I had approximately 25 direct and indirect reports, and we had approximately 70 projects going on from a training standpoint across the organization because there was so much change, a lot of things going on. And back then, we didn't have a way to track all of the projects, but the leaders needed to know what was going on. So one day I am in a meeting with one of the leaders and sharing this. It was a spreadsheet. It had 70 different projects on it. And I'm sharing with the leader all the things that he needed to know to prepare his organization for what was to come from a training standpoint. And as he's looking at all of this, all of a sudden he sits back and he puts his hands on the table and he said, Joni, I care about you. And I said, yeah, I do. But, inside I'm thinking, something's coming.
You knew.
And he said, I have to tell you, you have to stop being so effing nice. What are you talking about? And he said, I'm looking at all of this work that you've taken on. And you've taken on a lot of work. And he said, but you keep taking things on and you don't have the resources, the time, the budget to do all of it. And you keep saying yes to so many things. And by saying yes to all of these things, you're putting yourself, your team, the organization at risk. And I thought, I don't want to put the organization at risk. That's not why I'm saying yes. I'm taking these things on because you're asking me to do them. You're asking my team to do them. And isn't my job to take them on? And through the nature of that conversation, I learned that I have a particular pleasing tendency. Please, accommodate, make better. Let me provide, service, all the things. But what I wasn't doing is I wasn't looking at the bigger picture and what could actually have been done.
Right.
So I was putting the organization at risk. I was putting my team at risk. And I didn't see
and
it.
Yourself.
And myself
and
at risk.
Right, yeah.
And I didn't see it that way.
Right.
But it was through his feedback and his choice to take time to share with me, to hold a mirror up and share something with me that I couldn't see for myself. He helped unveil a blind spot for me. After I left his office, I went and shed a few tears. I just felt really naked and embarrassed. And from there, I went and hired an executive coach. And I started to speak with all the other leaders in the business saying, I just got this feedback that I'm being too effing nice or trying to please too much. And they all went, oh, he told you that?
Because we told him.
Yeah. And so all of, and it's not that I hadn't heard the feedback before, that I couldn't take it all on. It was the person, the timing, my openness. I mean, the relationship that I had with this person, his name is Mark, by the way. The relationship I had with Mark was such a trusting relationship, and I knew that he had my best interests at hand.
And that's key there, because I know sometimes you'll get feedback from someone. And I'm going to say, Joni, this is a book, I think, for business, for personal relationships. I mean, feedback goes back and forth, personal relationships in a workplace. So this is a tool you could just use as a person if you struggle. I mean, I don't think it's even about struggling. It's just really, even if you're good, getting great. Yeah. If you're okay, good. If you don't like it, some tools to get better at it. But what I love what you said is that Mark had developed a relationship with you to where you trusted him, so he was able to give you, that's what he said was very direct.
It was very direct.
And you heard him. And then you took action. Right. Which is, sometimes you can hear him, but the taking action is when you know the feedback, it's going to create change.
Yes. And when it takes change, and what also happened is he didn't ask me what I was going to do with the feedback. I mean, again, for him to provide the feedback, he had no idea where it was going to go. So number one, it took courage for him to provide the feedback. It took compassion for him to actually see something in me that and articulated that I kind of knew about myself, but I didn't really know about myself. The pleasing quality is something. Too nice can be something. It was so impactful, Crystal, that, and when I say it changed my life, it did. I call him around the anniversary of when he gave me feedback every single year. And every time I call him, he'll say, oh, wasn't that big of a deal? And I'm like, it changed my life. Wow. It gave me permission to go and have the real conversations with the executives that I needed to have and to change my behavior.
Do you think if you would have heard that sooner in life, it would have changed who you are today?
Potentially. It depends. There's so many things that it's dependent upon. I mean, I'd heard the feedback before, but the way that it had been delivered didn't land for me. Right. Yeah. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't heard that before. But it didn't land for me the same way. But again, one of the things is he took a little bit of a risk to say what was there for him. And I think, and my whole point in repeating this is he didn't know where it was going to go. Oftentimes when we're giving feedback to somebody, we have no idea where it's going to go. Are
we supposed to know that?
No.
So, people, leaders, parents, friends, whoever is going to give feedback, your job isn't to know where it's going to go. Do you think people get caught up there?
Oh, 100%. I think people are anticipating, like I said earlier, what if I say the thing and they cry? Well, what if they do? Yeah. Let them have their moment. Let them process through what it is that they need to process through. What if they get angry? Well, what if they do? it's okay for them to get angry about hearing something that may be confronting for them, and then let them figure out what they want to do with the feedback, if anything.
So using the mastering feedback, when was the last time you had to give just some really tough feedback using your model? Like you struggle. Well, I don't know. Maybe you just jam this.
No, you know what? I'm a human being too. I think when we are growing, we learn a lot about communication. Giving feedback is one of those communication skills that takes practice. It's not a one and done. It's you're always on the court. The last time that I needed to give direct feedback was with one of my clients who he had noticed something with one of his employees. And it was clear as he was sharing with me what that was, it was really clear to me that he needed to give her direct feedback, and he didn't want to. And I said, your role, if any of this is going to change, it's going to change because you're willing to say the thing to her that she needs to hear. And if you don't say that thing, she will never change that behavior. So your role is to give her feedback. And he did it. And it came out as best as he could do it. And she heard it, though. But on the other side of it, she heard it.
That's the goal, right?
She processed it. It stung. She was curious about it. And so the goal was achieved. But the feedback, for me to say to a client, sometimes what happens is, can you do it for me? Absolutely not. It's not my feedback to give. But to have to say to the client, this is your job. It's your role, it's your responsibility. And I'll say this to any leader out there. Your role as a leader is to lead people and to provide them with timely feedback when you notice something is off course. That's your role.
Yeah. So what do you feel about you being an expert in this space, the term or the caption, feedback is a gift?
I think it is a gift. It depends on a human's perspective of what feedback is. You can look at it as a gift and take it from the person and say, "Wow, you've given me a gift. I'm not quite sure what to do with it yet. I don't know how it works." I think feedback is a gift. I also think that a lot of people don't look at it as a gift,
right? And
they look at it as a judgment. Being shamed, being blamed, whatever it might be. Depends on how it's delivered.
Right. So that's actually, a good point, because I agree. I always say feedback is a gift. And when people give me feedback, once I get out of my way, because we're human, I do look at it as a gift. But you mentioned it's a gift, person who's giving the gift, but the person receive it, the shame, the judging, I guess you have no control over that. You just have to just deliver the feedback and allow them the space to process what that is. Do you think we allow people the space to process, or do we expect action?
I think there's a couple of things that show up. I think that we do expect action, but first, before we get to action, I think because many of us are uncomfortable with certain emotions, we don't want those emotions to show up. So again, going to crying, yelling, whatever, when the feedback's given, we can't be responsible for how the person receives the feedback. We can only be responsible for how we give it.
Right.
And I think sometimes what's missing is that when feedback is given, we sometimes don't set it up with, hey, you know what, Crystal, I really care about you. And I've noticed something that's been occurring over a series of days, and I wanted to bring it to your attention. Do you mind if I do that? So it's how we set it up when we're giving feedback.
Right.
But also to even say to the person, now that I've given you feedback, I'm going to give you time to process, unless you've got something to share back with me.
Right.
And that exchange. And then once that person's had a chance to process it, to ask them, so what have you decided to do with the feedback?
Right.
And to be ready for if the answer, I'm going to do nothing with it, comes back. Because sometimes that is the answer.
Right.
I'm not going to do anything with your feedback right now, but thank you.
And I think people who give feedback don't expect that answer.
Correct.
And that's what happened to me. I was like director level. and which means I had a team below me, of course, and my boss. So that mid-middle level management is such a sensitive spot, and that's my area that I love to help organizations firm up. I think that's the weakest, but they have such an impact on the organization, people, process, bottom line, everything. So I was in that little weak spot, and I was doing really well. I knew it because I had great reviews and I got awards and all the stuff they give you when you do well. And my manager came to me and said, I have feedback for you. And I can remember the day what I had on, the lighting in the office. I mean, it was very clear for me. And it was a crystal clear moment defining one of my values. And she pulled me aside and said, she said, I need to talk to you. And she did. And she said, you recognize your people too much. And I was like, I recognize. And I even repeated it out loud, like, I recognize people too much. And I kind of sat with, and I even allowed that moment. I thought about it. I didn't step away. I mean, we sat in that moment together. I invited her to process it with me. She sat there and was looking at me like, what are you going to say? And I was processing, and I allowed it to happen. And I wasn't strategic about it. It just did. It wasn't like I planned on doing this. So I thought about it, and then I thought about, my employee satisfaction survey results. I thought about my relationships. I knew the kids' names on the desk of my employees. I
knew their children's names.
I knew their children's names. I knew that grandma just moved in. I knew them. I had relationships with them. And a part of that is recognizing them, when they do well or when they walk in the door. We knew each other. So I paused and said, thank you for sharing, but I think I'm going to keep that one. Now, of course, it made it awkward for her, but, that feedback was, and, I was really proud of myself because that could have been taken from me.
Right.
If I didn't know myself and if I didn't stop to reflect. So I think that pause, reflect part is important for everyone. The person giving it and the person receiving it. Now, I'm not saying this happens all the time, but for me, that was the only time I think that showed up for me. That was very clear because it was such an odd, then later on I found out there was other motives in play. But in that moment, I felt like you're taking a slice of me. And I kind of like that about me. And this is working for me, and this is who I am, and let me do some self-check. I was transparent, open enough to do some self-check. So what I love about this book, Joni, as we wrap up, is that it's something that we can use for our professional space and our personal space. I want to encourage people. I think everyone's a leader. So when you say leader's guide, to me, everyone on the planet is a leader in some space. So this is for everyone. Yeah, I look at leadership or leader as a verb and a noun. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So thank you for writing this. This is needed, especially in a time like today where people are sharing so much, and feedback is people aren't open to taking it as much. So maybe we get better at delivering it. So we can, people can open up and receive and process and take some action. So lastly, before we go, I want you to share, what word do you have for yourself for this year, for 2024? Do you have a word or a phrase that you're working through?
There's several. I can't think of all of them on my board right now, but I would say easeful, intentional, outrageous.
I love it. I love outrageous. I think I'm going to steal that one. I like outrageous. So thank you, Joni. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Yes, this is great. We had a good time. You guys, please, please, please download my podcast, like my podcast, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please just reach out at crystal@crystalblackwell.com. And thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Thank you. Bye-bye.